Hello, Garland Nixon here. I think it's time to have a little discussion about the results of U.S. policy towards Israel and Zionism. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. And let me get up. I guess there we go. Um, so, I think what I want to talk about today, briefly, got a little bit of time. We got 45 minutes or so to chat. What I want to talk about is the effect of the policies of the U.S. towards Israel, right? The Zionist policies, U.S. foreign policy, and in particular regarding Israel and all things Israeli, on the overall health of the U.S. empire. People know I use the term U.S. empire. There are people who use different terms. The U.S. as a country, I see here's the way I look at it. You got 900 to 1,000 bases around the world. You're overthrowing governments everywhere, and you're literally in the midst of World War III. You've got a war going on in Ukraine, where you're providing everything, the intelligence, you're running the war out of Ramstein Air Base, you're providing the bombs, the missiles, everything, the political cover for a regime that you put in power and you keep in power. You're literally paying the bills, the pensions of the people in that country as your war. Israel, same thing. That's your war. Now you're threatening Venezuela. That's your war. So bottom line, you're overthrowing Nepal. You're working on overthrowing countries around the edge of Russia. The U.S. is an empire, and it's trying to maintain its imperial dominance, which is already gone. It is like, read the book Simulacrum, where they discuss a person trying to create something out of their memory, something that once was, trying to recreate it. But the problem is that thing never existed. So you're trying to create something that once was. Little do you know it never existed in the first place. And there's a contradiction there. That's what the United States, that's the contradiction that the U.S. is caught up in. The contradiction that the United States is trying to maintain hegemony and stop a multipolar world, in a multipolar world in which the U.S. has already lost hegemony, arguably, if they ever had it, which maybe never really did. So the U.S. is trying to hold on to hegemony at a time that they don't have hegemony, fighting to hold on to it, but they don't even have it. The only people that think the U.S. still has hegemony are as a faction of the ruling elite, a faction of the foreign policy elite still believe that. Now let's get to Israel. Tell you why I thought about this personally, right? Let me give you a little story about. I like to give stories, analogies, things that give rise to that inspire me to think about various things, right? So I got a friend of mine. He's Puerto Rican, and he moved here, and he told me a story about when he first moved here from Puerto Rico. And he says, when I was in Puerto Rico, this was 30, 40 years ago, whatever. But he said that when he moved here in Puerto Rico, he had Puerto Rican friends, but it was, family members. He said, I go to a cookout and we had people that were black as night and we had people that were white as snow. And this was our family. He says, I didn't know anything about race, because he says, in my family, we had people who were dark and light and everything in between, right? And he says, and I looked at it like a property, an attribute. Like, some people in my family have red hair and some people have blonde hair and some people have clear. Some are tall, some are short, some are darker, some are lighter. He said that was his concept. And when he got here and he moved to Trenton, New Jersey, there was the issue of race and the race issues that were going on, particularly back then, that were difficult. And he didn't get it because he didn't understand the context, because in his family and his life experience, it didn't make sense to him. And all these people and all these race things, right? Okay. So he had to understand and get accustomed. And as he said, I never really got it. And I've always see the problems here and like, okay, well, this is screwed up. Why don't Americans just look a different way or fix it? He doesn't get it. Here's my point. But he said things have happened in his life where he's looked at it and he's had to go, oh my gosh, this poison has gotten me. I'm thinking like Americans when it comes to the issue of race. And he'd have to hit himself and stop, stop, stop. You've been poisoned. Here's my point. I'm right coming from, as you may know, some people follow my channel. I went to up to Kingston, New York, and had spoke at this Occupy Peace event with the great Gerald Celente, and of course, Judge Knapp was there, and Scott Ritter, and Dennis Kucinich, and my dear friend Ray McGovern, on and on and on, right? Great people there, and we spoke. I'm riding back down the road. I'm coming back up the road, and I'm looking. I'm thinking, I need to get something to eat. I'm kind of hungry right now. And I see this bagel place, kind of like, you might have seen Einstein Bagels, these kind of places where you can go in and you can get a bagel and they can put whatever you want on. Do you want an egg? Do you want turkey sausage? Do you want this and that on your bagel? Or do you want a bagel, with meat or, whatever you want, you can get your bagel with it, right? And we're riding down the road and I looked at it and I'm like, oh, that looks great, the bagel place. And then I hesitated for a second. I said, but I don't know, because could it be owned by these? It is a bagel place, and it could be Zionists, and I don't want to support Zion. And then it dawned on me that I had to think that thing through. As you can see, I had to think that thing through. Yes, I heard. Yes, arcane eclectic. Let me just say this. Yes, I heard about that. Well, I'll discuss it later. But it made me think, because how you do, your brain associates with things, right? It'll actually build physical connections from one thing to another, right? If you learn as a child, you learn the word, say, cup and saucer, right? Okay, cup and saucer are two separate things, but let's just say you see, teacup and saucer, and these two things go together. Eventually, your brain will build a physical connection between the thought of cup, or the word of cup, and saucer. It'll become a physical metaphor in your brain. Your brain connects these two things. There's nothing you can do about it. That's why if people teach you, oh, this group of people is a certain way, that group is a certain way, racism, discrimination, all kind of things, anger, hatred, all kind of those things are a matter of somebody connects this group of people with something bad. And then it grows from a metaphor of concept, literally, to a physical metaphor. When you think of this, a physical attachment grows that automatically attaches those two things. I'm suspecting, me, I don't give a crap. I'll say what I got to think, and what I'm thinking, and I'll talk about it, because I'm a human being and I have a right to do that. So it made me evaluate. Well, okay, Garland, you were hungry. Fair enough. You saw a bagel place and you thought, man, wouldn't I like a bagel with an egg on it and some avocado maybe, and I don't know, tomatoes and lettuce. Oh man, that stuff would be good, right? Great. Sounds great, right? And sesame bagel. Love a sesame bagel. But as soon as I did that, a connection arose into my brain. Bagel. And you know what the connection is? Bagel. That's like if you saw a tortilla, you think of a Hispanic person, right? You see some collard greens, you think either down south or black people. You think of things that are connected. You think of pasta, Italian, right? It's normal. There's nothing racist about saying, okay. You think of schnitzel, German, baguette, French, right? All these things, right? And you think of bagel, and you think of Jewish. I don't want to say use the word person for any of that. I should use the word cuisine. How about that? Okay. So as soon as I associated that in my brain with Jewish cuisine, right, and that religion versus ethnicity, there was a very negative connotation there. It was about Zionism. It was about Israel. It was about genocide. It was about, I don't want to support genocide. And something else was going on there. And that was, I think this is reality, a recognition that there are a lot of Jewish people who, I would say the majority of Jewish people, who see Israel as inextricably linked to their concept of their religion, of their faith, of their ethnicity, etc. Okay. And therefore, in my thought process here, I guess in this going into the back of this, it was a feeling that the likelihood or probability, because this is a Jewish ethnic food, and I'm thinking maybe it's owned by the Jewish ethnic people, and that means an increased probability that they're supporting Israel, and Israel's doing bad things, so I don't want to support Israel. That's where I am. Now, keep in mind something. It's not logical for this reason, because anywhere I go, there's the billionaires. So that's like, well, okay, if I go on X, or if I go on Facebook, or if I go on anything else, right? Billionaires, be they Jewish or not, are all supporting this foreign policy crap, right? By the same token, I go to New York or I go to any liberal, place, and there's blue and yellow pro-Nazi Ukraine crap all over the place. So this is all the same thing. I'm just relating it for the purposes of this particular instance. They're all the same thing. The contradictions of liberalism that says we're here for the minorities and the LGBTQ and to help do gooder crap. At the same time, you're making everything blue and yellow, and you're supporting the U.S. empire in its most evil deeds, which is overthrowing the country of Ukraine, inserting a Nazi government, literal Nazi government, and then supporting that Nazi government in a military conflict against Russia. That is, just a horrible act where a lot of people have died, and you basically have sacrificed your Nazi government and the people in the country and turned Ukraine into a concentration camp run by Nazis to throw its own people into a meat grinder, right? So that contradiction of liberalism is obvious, okay? But and then let me add this, and I struggle with that because I'm pissed at liberals. I struggle with that because I was in Kingston and there was this sign, and it was that blue and yellow color of Ukraine crap that in any liberal county or city or state, they painted the friggin' fire hydrants and every damn thing else. You turn on any Hollywood movie advertisement, every stinking thing is Nazi blue yellow. The color of Nazi propaganda, blue and yellow, which burns me up and infuriates me all the time. Okay, so there's that contradiction. So there's many contradictions I'm dealing with here. Okay, but for the purposes of this, that anger, fury, and contradiction is aimed at loosely the liberal class and those who are involved in that weird contradiction of we're the good guys, let's support the Nazis. Hello. Shaking my head, shaking the beans in my head on that one. It doesn't seem to work well for me. Okay. But then there's the other part of this contradiction, that we are God's chosen people. God chose us because he loves us. And therefore, we have a right to do, because God loves us and we're chosen people, anything we do is inherently good. See, that's the problem why I'm not a religious person. I grew up in a Southern Baptist, and quickly we're like, stuff that makes sense to me, right? So being a Southern Baptist ran me away from religion. Certainly everybody can worship as they choose, please, and I support everybody's right, but I've just had a bad experience with it, so I kind of mellowed out and started studying Zen, and that works well for me. So you got to do what works well for you. But I think it's the contradiction, in the same way that I'm infuriated at the liberals. It's the contradiction of we're the good guys here for the minorities and we support Nazis in war. And we are the logical class that is the academics that uses our brain, and we believe in Russiagate, the most flimsy, absurd conspiracy theory ever, and that we're not willing, when it comes to big pharma, when it comes to COVID, we're not willing to question that, and we'll attack anybody who questions that. So the contradictions of liberalism infuriated me. So when I see these liberal icons, such as blue yellow, the color of propaganda, it brings up a lot of anger and anxiety and tension for me. And now I got to realize I saw a bagel place, and I'm like, oh, I better be time out, right? And it caused me to say, you got to ask yourself, Garland, you're a guy who doesn't obviously believe in discrimination and racism and all that kind of crap, and you feel like everybody should be have the same expectation of rights. And the last thing I believe in is, blame a whole group because somebody in the group did something. But you're part of the United, and as my buddy said, you're in this thing, you're in the water, and you're getting wet. You're in the U.S. You're in this culture, and it's going to affect you, right? So let's not try to pretend like you're some kind of a Garland. Don't try to pretend like you're some kind of an intellectual Superman. You're a human being. So I see bagel shop and I think, I don't want to support Israel. Okay. So at that point, I realized to myself, and I think about the chat, because for years, I've been really doing this heavy since 2022 and looking at the chat and reading the chat and seeing the difference in the chat. And the chat went from, okay, Israel to Jews. And what I've noticed is in my chat and in chats all over, there is an anger not towards just Israel, not just towards Zionism. There are people like me and a lot of us who are angry and furious at Zionism, and we understand Zionism for what it is. It's an atheistic ideology, and it's a political ideology. It has nothing to do with Judaism. However, because the U.S. empire and the European colonial powers, because it benefited them to directly associate Zionism with Judaism, they did two things. Number one, in the minds of the public, they worked to indoctrinate us to directly associate Zionism with Judaism so that we only see it as one for their benefit, for the benefit of the ruling elite in the West. Boom. Zionism, Judaism, same thing. They wanted us, even though it isn't, they wanted us to believe that. Number one. Number two, they worked to brainwash and indoctrinate Jewish people all over the world, outside of Israel, in the West, etc., that it's the same thing, that it is their duty to support Israel no matter what. I've talked to, I don't know how many Jewish people who have used that words. Those exact terms. Yeah, Garland, I didn't know. I was brainwashed. I was told, oh, a land with no people, without a people, for people without a land, and all this propaganda stuff that they were fed by these imperial and the colonial powers so that it would benefit the colonial powers, so that they could say Israel is there, not because there's a bunch of oil there and we need an intelligence and military outposts amongst the oil, because we need a military outpost so we can dominate the region. No, we're just doing it because, and this is the liberal part of the liberal bullshit comes out, which is this: we're doing it because the poor Jewish people, we got to look out for them. We're the good guys. And of course, then you add the religious part. And of course, God promised to it 2,000 years ago. Do you really think the King of England cares about what God promised somebody you believe and believes it? Do you think Trump? Do you think the ruling elite that are running Exxon Mobil and British Petroleum, and do you think they really are into what God promised the Jews 2,000 years ago? These are people that were like burning Jews and doing pogroms against Jews for the last 1,000 years in Europe. Do you really think they're like, we got to look out for the Jews because we really love them? Absolutely not. They're nothing but sacrificial lambs. This is about the colonial and imperial powers saying, how can we dominate this region of the world that has all the damn oil? And we need a trope. We need a story. We need a narrative, because that's all they run off, narratives. And it's got to be that we're the good guys. We're looking out for the Jews. How ironic is it that the part of the world that was treated Jews the worst for the last 1,000 years, that literally it crescendoed, this anti-Semitism in the West crescendoed during the Holocaust. It was a buildup to a blossomed in the Holocaust. And then after they literally did the Holocaust, they said, the Europeans, after they did the Holocaust, they said, we've got to look out for the Jews because there was a Holocaust, as if they didn't do it. And we're not going to actually pick the Western or Eastern European countries that actually effected the Holocaust. We're going to go over there and steal somebody else's land and shove them over there. And what do you know? We've got a colony right in the middle of the oil. And this was always destined, because the Jewish people were then chosen as both sacrificial lambs and human shields, so that they could then say, no, we're not in this area to steal everything that ain't nailed down. We're in this area to look out for the Jews. So that if you said, I think you're there to steal everything, you hate the Jews. There we go. It was ready-made. You're a racist, anti-Semite, whatever. It was set ready-made. But all along, the setup was there to blame the Jews. So that when people finally got mad at what the US and France, and particularly the US and England, were doing in the Middle East, and the US and England finally had to go completely bananas and try to kill everybody and destroy everything in the Middle East, they would have a human shield. And the human shield is the Jews. And so ultimately, I argue that the group that will suffer the most from what's happening in Israel are the Jewish people. This Judaism worldwide. I see it in the chat. I hear it in my ears when people talk. It's gone from Israel, 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 Zionism, Zionism, Zionism to the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. Everywhere. Look what they're doing here. Look what they're doing there. And there is a level of anti-Semitism, absolutely. But it is highly predictable. It's extremely predictable that would happen. And think about this. If I can figure this out, and you, dear and fluffy friends in the chat, can figure this out, then certainly let's not think that the royal family of England, or that the DuPonts, or the ruling elite families in the United States couldn't figure this out. Not only could they figure it out, that was the intent. That was always the setup. And now what do we have? It's starting to blossom as people start to become more and more infuriated. And as the political dynamics, as the political institutions in the United States and throughout the West become unstable, they got a ready-made, not only do they have a ready-made patsy, I'll put it to you like this. I remember hearing this, but I don't even remember where. When someone's been propagandized, when they start repeating propaganda and they think it's their idea. You know the type, where you talk to somebody and they've heard something on MSNBC or Fox. They've heard something on MSNBC or Fox, and you hear it over and over again. And they talk, you'd say, hey, what do you think, old Joe? Garland, I've been thinking about this situation recently, and I got an idea. Okay, what is it? And they simply repeat something that they heard on MSNBC or CNN and Fox. But they actually think it's their idea. I think Trump did this and that and thought this and this and that. And they think it's their idea. And they put it forward to you like it's their idea. And you go, well, that's an interesting concept. Except one thing, what? It ain't your idea. I just heard Anderson Cooper just said that. Oh, by the way, so did Rachel Maddow. Oh, by the way, so did that. So you just approached me with this, look on your face as though you were contemplating things, with this aura of you're in deep thought, and your deep thought has produced something, and you're like, I think, and the words come out of your mouth, the same damn words that Anderson Cooper said yesterday, that you think that you came up with the idea. That's what you've been completely propagandized. When you're repeating things that you read online like they're your idea, instead of listening to the things that you read online or hear online and questioning them. You can't question them because they have so ingrained into you to believe these people that you are somehow in your mind spiritually connected to Anderson Cooper or whoever the hell it is on Fox or whatever, to a point where their thoughts are your thoughts. You're nothing but an expression of the propaganda of the U.S. empire. It goes through you. So here's my point. Maybe that's true about all of us, including me to some extent, to a point where my brain is now associating things. And I guess my brain has associated Israel, Judaism, Zionism, economics, to a point where I see something that is a Jewish ethnic food, and I immediately recoil and think, oh gosh, am I giving money to Israel? Now, here's the part that's really going to freak you out. Not going to freak you out, but here's the part that I think is interesting. It's not an absurd association in my brain. The fact of the matter is this, that it's not an absurd association to see a Jewish deli and ask yourself, is it owned by Jewish people? The majority of the Jewish people support Israel. So therefore, if it's a Jewish deli and it's owned by Jewish people, and the odds are overwhelming that they support Israel, right? But I can do the same thing when I go down south and I go in a little southern town and there's a little sandwich shop in there. Why? Because these evangelical Christians are more than likely pro-Israel supporters. So I can go in there and say, yeah, I'm in bum crap, sheep, raccoon crap, Arkansas. And I want to get to something in this little sandwich shop on the side of the road. But am I supporting Zionists in Israel? It's the same thing, right? But the difference is when and if this thing goes really bad and hurts America, as it already is, here's the difference. People ain't going to blame the population of raccoon, sheep, crap, Arkansas as a population. They'll be able to disassociate themselves and go back to, I'm a evangelical Christian Republican or whatever. They will have the ability, if it goes bad, to jump ship. Hey, did you support that? Everything went bad as a result of that. No. They can walk away if they want. And they aren't automatically associated with it. There's other things that they're associated, whereas the Jewish community, the Jewish ethnicity, even though there are a lot of Jewish people that are opposed to this or fighting this, Jewish people are automatically associated with this heinous crime and will be for a long, long, long time. I would argue that Judaism is stained as a result of this, worldwide stained, wherein on so many levels, wherein there are people looking at it saying, number one, the kind of things that are staining, that Zionism has stained Judaism, because let's not forget, one of the things that the government does is says, if you attack Israel, it's anti-Semitic. That's okay. We've got to attach them. And that's just a method that's used to protect the empire. Because if you go after Zionism, you're going after the empire and the colonial powers. And so they have to stop you from going after Zionism. So they use, just like the liberals do, if you say, I don't agree with this, you're a racist, sexist, homophobe, right? If you say, I don't agree with what Zionism, then you're an anti-Semite. It's the same game that the empire uses. They're the same. They're a fraud. Well, they're going to come in office. Yes, we're tired of all these people calling everybody a racist. They're doing exactly. This is a game of empire. This is a game of power. This is a game of the ruling elite. Yes, the liberals do it. And yes, the conservatives call them out on it, but they're doing the same damn thing exactly the same way because it's a game of the ruling elite. Now, when we, just checking my time, when we look at it now, we say there has been a history of people hating Jews just because they're Jews. I remember a guy I knew, I was a law enforcement guy, and this guy was very anti-Semitic. And he literally, he said, he was telling me why he didn't like Jews. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, you're talking to a black guy here. And if you're telling me you don't like this group, particularly as a whole, I got to start suspecting that maybe there are other groups that you don't like as a whole, you know. But I'd say to say this. But so he's telling me back then, this was many years ago, I was in law enforcement. He's telling me, yes, they killed Jesus and they're the Christ killers and blah. And I'm thinking, dude, you're really sitting here getting into that, and you don't like Jews because of, you know, a myth of 2,000 years ago that some of us don't even necessarily trust is true. Some, as your religion, you do, but these aren't the same damn people, even if they did. And might I add, if they killed Jesus, it's because he was a Jew. They were also Jews, and he was too. So left that out. But at any rate, here's my point. My point is, there are a lot of people that, for a number of reasons, that anti-Semitism exists. And so it is now being stoked, is what's happening. And the problem is that the anger towards Jewish people, right? The anger towards Zionism. So I'll put it like this. Because the powers that be linked Zionism and Judaism as one in the minds of a lot of people, a darn bug flying around here. Because they were able to do that, it is not illogical for people who accept the concept that Zionism, in fact, let's say one better. For those who would believe that Zionism and Judaism are the same, it's sensible in that context to be mad at Zionism and be mad at Judaism. Now, for those of us who understand what Zionism really is, we don't, because we, judge every human being on their actions. Let me add this, and because the powers that be over the course of several generations here have been very successful in even brainwashing a significant portion of the Jewish community into believing that Zionism is an integral part of their religion, it makes it worse for everybody. So here's my point. To me, as the brutality and barbarism of Zionism becomes more and more obvious, and because the people of the U.S., the power of ruling elite, have been able to some extent distance themselves so that people don't say, look what the U.S. and England, we'll give them as the leaders, are doing in Palestine. They say, look what Israel's doing in Palestine, with the help, with the backing and support of the U.S. and Britain. So that if I'm going out and stabbing you, for instance, if the U.S. and Britain come and they give me a knife and pay me and say, go kill Joe Schmo there, and I do it, people will assign a different level of responsibility to me that did the stabbing, the killing, than they will to the person who supported me doing that. Rightly or wrongly, people will. So what's happening is now the US and England, though they're taking heat for what Israel's doing, is able to distance themselves plausibly just enough to put 90% of the blame on Israel, and then to bring this ghoul, Netanyahu, in, so that now people are like, yes, Netanyahu is the evil ghoul. He's the whatever it is. He's officially the ghoul. He's Trump. He's Putin. He's Biden. He's whatever entity that somebody wants to say. We need a bad guy. We need the Lex Luthor of Superman, right? Doc Ock of Spider-Man. We need a person who's nothing, a being in a narrative that's pure evil. And depending on your narrative, it may be Trump, it may be Putin, it may be Biden, it may be Garland Nixon, I don't know, it may be Fauci, it may be whoever, right? And you kind of ignore the system and everything behind them, and boom, that person is pure evil. That's Netanyahu. He is the embodiment of pure evil. And what happens in the end? In the end, he can die, which sooner or later everybody dies, and the system can then say, well, Netanyahu did such a bad thing. Now that he's gone, we can straighten this out because it was just him. Now there are a lot of people who also, sadly and unfortunately, will look at the Jewish people and say, our country's falling apart. We're poor, we're broke, which it is, and we are, and we will be. Maybe not we are, but we will be. This country is deteriorating dramatically, and same with Europe. And then they'll say, and who's to blame? And the ruling elite will say, the Jews over there. The ruling elite will, but they're always looking for somebody to blame. It'll be Putin's price hike. Remember that? And so what will happen is it will then benefit them, the ruling elite in these countries. It will benefit them to deflect from their responsibility. And they got a ready-made scapegoat. And that's the Jewish people. And how can I tell? Because I looked at a bagel place and I'm thinking, I don't want to go there because I might be supporting Israel. And I realized that I'm one that'll think about that. What does that mean? What am I thinking? Why am I thinking? What does that mean? Is it have I been affected by the system around me? Blah blah blah. I'm asking these questions. A lot of people don't ask questions. They're just going to do what they do in anger and fury. So I guess what I'm saying is this: that Judaism is destabilized worldwide as a both a religion and an ethnicity. Judaism is stained as a religion, as an ethnicity, and in great danger. Because if people start getting angry and say, well, let's blame the Jews, do you think the ruling elite who are going to say, well, if they don't blame the Jews, they're going to come looking at us because we're the guilty parties. They'll jump right on with you. Yeah, with people like the Jews, they'll jump right on with you. Yeah, it sure is. Go get them, guys. That's the idea of having a what's the word? Of having a barrier between you and and your actions, of having a human shield, so that at some point, if you need that human shield, it's a shield. It will shield you from accountability. It will shield you from responsibility. It will maybe even shield you from violence. And instead, the human shields it. They take the violence. They take the accountability and the responsibility. And if necessary, you as the ruling elite join in with the masters. And the masters say, we're angry at somebody. And the ruling elite says, the Jews. And the masters say, okay. The ruling elite say, okay, go get them, guys. That's the fear that I have. That's the concern that I have. That's the reality that's potential. So we shall see. Meanwhile, let me add this. The Zionism, the necessary for the empire and the colonial powers use of Zionism, I'd say in the title I put is destabilizing, has destabilized the U.S. political system. So we won't talk about there are a number of things that have destabilized the political system, but the use of Zionism to attempt to hold on to hegemony. So I think part of what we're seeing going on here is the U.S. has come to the conclusion that they can't fight Russia straight up, and they kind of want out of that. They kind of went out of Ukraine because they've lost, and they're like, yeah, that ain't working. And when the U.S. loses, they walk the hell away. And the Europeans are like, no, no, please don't leave. And they don't understand. This is what the Americans do. Historically, they lose, they walk. They leave everything as it is and get the hell out. And there's nothing going to change that. Sorry, Europeans, you think you're going to drag the U.S. into a war with Russia? It ain't happening. They're exercising the Samsonite option, as we say. I think reality has struck home. They would love to throw the Philippines, South Korea, and Japan and Australia, take them Ukraine style and heave them up against China and see what happens. But maybe perhaps they're looking at it saying that might not work so well either. So I think what they're focusing on is let's steal everything that ain't nailed down in the Western Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, including, starting with Venezuela. And of course, if we can't take China down in a fair fight, why don't we double down on the region in where all the oil is? We'll overthrow all these governments. Look, those Arab countries that think they're, have some level of security, the leaders of Qatar and the Saudi Arabia, UAE, they'll kill every one of them. They'll kill every one of them and overthrow their governments. Why? Because when they say, we don't want you to sell oil to China, or we don't want you to work with Russia and the OPEC plus anymore, and those leaders say no, they'll kill every one of them. And it's already started. They're already starting to make it clear. Netanyahu, oh yes, we'll bomb anywhere we want, anywhere we think, we'll attack any country. That's the US saying, look, the time has come. We worked with you as long as we could, but now we need to try to maintain hegemony. We want complete and total control of the oil in this region and everything else. And you're going to be either a total puppet or we'll kill you. And so now the Saudi royal family, the Emirates, every single one of them, they'll kill every one of them. And that's the plan. Number one. That's what I believe. The plan is to overthrow everyone. Egypt, Turkey, overthrow every one of those governments in the region, completely dominate and control them, and control the oil-rich region of the world, and to cut off China and anyone else who won't go, to control the oil and therefore control the price of oil and everything else. And that's how they take out China. Okay. And for that, they'll sacrifice the economy of Europe. That's done. They'll sacrifice the U.S. economy, and they'll sacrifice the Jewish people. That's the first one to go. But the problem they have now is this. Because these things are not working, because there is significant resistance in the world, and because the U.S. doesn't have the dominant power that it once had, the American people are starting to feel the pain. and there's destabilization, and they don't have the time and they don't have the support from the American people to enact this diabolical and devious plot to continue to rule the world by taking out China, by first assuming power for all the countries in the oil-rich region of the world. Ain't working. Not working. They can't do it. And so what we're looking at is the American people. See, I'll put it like this. One of the things they would have to do to enact this plan is to somewhat deliver economically for the American people. You gotta, because you have to stabilize and your grip on power at home. And there's two ways to do it. There's probably more, but I'll just name two. Number one is to deliver so that the people are fat and happy, that they got a job, they got food, they got their future, they feel okay about the government, things are working out for them, and they will support the government doing whatever it's doing. That's one way. The other way is government crackdowns. We are one assassination away from, a military occupation of the entire country, of martial law. That's all we are. One assassination away from martial law. And that's the other option. And with the type of rulers that we have and ruling elite, the idea of providing things for the people so that the people are happy and the people support them, that ain't an option that they're going to do. No, their option is, as I said, one assassination away, one more lone wolf shooter who is a quick change artist who takes guns apart and puts them back together, and then sends text messages to say every single thing, every detail of the crime. We're just one more of these very strange and odd instances away from martial law. Oh, there was another major assassination. I guess we got to have martial law. That's more the type of thing that they'll do. And we can look from COVID. We can look from what's happening in Europe right now, in England, where literally the government of England just grabbed a talk show host who is a dissident, and George Galloway nabbed him as a terrorist and locked and arrested him, and then released him and his wife. Where now they're saying you got to have a digital ID. So the problem is that they're already showing their hand, that a totalitarian crackdown is the option, not delivering for the people, because this system can't do that anyway. This economic system couldn't do that if they wanted to do it. So what do we have? As we barrel towards, I hope we make it, but as we barrel towards the midterms, the ruling elite have an issue, have to deal with the same issue that they're dealing with in Romania, Moldova, France, etc. And that is that the people have been told that they have a democracy, which implies that they have a right to pick their leaders, and their leaders will then represent the masses. But that ain't the way the system really works. And it's going to be difficult for them. I'll put it like this. As long as it's close and they're tweaking the system, as long as all I got to do is tweak the system a little bit to make sure that it's Trump versus Harris, that it's Obama versus McCain, that it's Obama versus Mitt Romney, that it's Hillary versus Trump. As long as they can tweak the system, that we can get some fraud, warmongering scumbag, the two fraudulent warmongering Zionist scumbags to choose from, it's fine. As long as they can tweak that system, heads I win, tails you lose. But as soon as it becomes the people have had enough, and we want to choose a bunch of people, we want to start voting for people, who knows who's going to run? I bet you some young, strong anti-Zionists are going to run. Some anti-war libertarians are going to run in some of the red districts. Some people who really ain't down with what the system's doing are going to run. And the system is going to be looking at a situation where it has a choice to make. Do we continue with the illusion of democracy and actually allow democracy and allow the people to pick people that are now going to say you can't do what you want to do? Or do we just say, you know what, this ain't working for us? The illusion of democracy is too much of an inconvenience, and we ain't going to do it anymore. We're just going to take totalitarian power. I would argue the likelihood is that the second option is the most likely option that the ruling elite will choose, because that aligns with their totalitarian, fascist, what's the word I'm going to look for? Nature, as is clearly expressed and exposed by what they do with Zionism. There we have the place where the contradiction, where the rubber meets the road. There we have the place where the lies and the contradiction come together against the people. As long as they can tell you you have freedom and democracy, and there's that illusion, and there's enough people that believe it, things work. But what happens when they no longer even pretend anymore? When you say, okay, we're going to vote, we want these people in, and they just say, yeah, no, we can't have them. Yeah, but we vote them, or yeah, we'll just shoot them. No, we've decided to vote Garland in as whatever, senator. And they say, man, Garland is not the guy the system wants as senator. And the system says, nah. They say, but we voted and he won in a landslide. Yes, fair enough. That means he loses. We're putting somebody else in. And they dispense with the illusion, see, of democracy. The system is rapidly approaching that point of instability. It's rapidly approaching the point where the people are going to say, we've had enough. We want to do something different. And they're able, through the mechanics of the system, to produce something such as a Garland. I'm just throwing that out. Such as a Garland or whatever. They're able to produce something, that the system doesn't want. And that could have a material effect on the system. I mean, what happens if they're able to 5 senators win that are not down with the system? What happens if enough people in the House win that are not down with the system that they could actually vote, rank the votes, that they could stop this stuff? What happens then? They can't afford to let that happen. So if this is in fact an illusion of democracy, which I think it is, then at some point the illusion becomes too much of a problem for the ruling elite, and they dispense with the illusion, and they say, okay, you know, we've had another assassination, whoever that may be, therefore we can't have a vote, therefore we can't seat these new senators, therefore we've got to charge Garland Nixon, who was elected as president, with mopery on the high seas and take him away, never to be seen again, you know, things of that nature. So I think that we are approaching a point where the system needs to blame somebody, and they will damn sure quickly blame the Jewish people, Judaism, and they will go from, yes, we're supporting Zionism and Judaism, to supporting it if they got to make a decision that the people are going to be bringing out pitchforks and guillotines, and either their heads go in the guillotine, the ruling elite, or they can find some other group to throw into the guillotine machine. They will damn sure choose the Jewish people. As that's the look. The Ukrainians, what do they say? We support the Ukrainians, and how do they support them? They throw them into the damn meat grinder. So in the same way, if they, let me tell you, if these warmongers, the neocons, imperialists, globalists, whatever you want to call them, if they support you, you'll be the first. If they say they support you, that means that they're setting you up for a fall, that they're setting you up so that if they get in trouble, they can stick you out there to take the hit. And I think that's the way they see Zionism and Judaism. It's a perfect shield for them. And I think that we are approaching times when all of these contradictions start to get too significant to be ignored, where the liberal of Democrat, the liberal fascists, and they're like, okay, vote for us because we're standing up for trans people and LGBTQ and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people look at them and say, yeah, no, you're not standing up for the little guy. You're not standing up for anybody. You're warmongering bastards. You're genocidal lunatics, and you're trying to drag us into a nuclear war with Ukraine. Sorry, all your lies are over. Where the whole, Trumpian wing, oh, I'm the president of peace and America first. And when people on that side of the aisle start saying, wait a minute, you gave us promises and you broke every one of them. You broke every one of them. You told us what we wanted to hear and you broke every promise. We don't believe you. We don't believe this. Cash Patel and the Bongino, you bring them in and you tell us all of this stuff. And now all of a sudden there's no Epstein list, and there's actually there's text messages that seem like they were written by a 45-year-old law enforcement officer, and we're told the 22-year-old trans escape quick change artist shooter wrote them. The people say we don't buy that anymore. When the voters, the electorate say, wake up and say, we've been had and we ain't going to be had again, and we vote any place, as Malcolm X said about the field slave. When you ask the field slave, do you want to run away? The field slave says, any place is better than here. And when you ask the person who formerly supported these liberals, hey, you're going to continue to support these Zionist, genocidal Ukraine Nazi lovers, they say anything is better, any place is better than here. And when you ask the former MAGA person, hey, you're going to support the people who told you America first when it was really Israel first, when they told you MAGA is now MIGA, make Israel great again. We're not going to give any more money to Ukraine. Okay, now I'm in office, I'm giving money to Ukraine. Oh, the Epstein list doesn't exist. How dare you ask for the Epstein list? When the MAGA people say we've been took too many times, we ain't doing that again. We are quickly approaching, we are rapidly approaching the point where the things that we, the people in the chat, that you guys know, the things that I know, that they're a bunch of lying frauds, and that we've been took, hoodwinked, bamboozled, misled, led astray over and over again, and it ain't happening again. We're approaching that point. And when we approach that point, the only thing that the ruling elite knows is an iron fist will crack down on you. And you better give us your, here's your digital ID and you better have it, or else let me see your papers. Walking down the street, can I see your papers? Well, do I have to show you papers? Yes, you do, or I'm locking you up, I'm deporting you, I'm sending you to alligator Alcatraz. That's the point. Destabilization is here. We have to accept that that's a reality. And sure, here's the thing I was going to say. Be the calm person in the storm, because everybody else's mind is destabilized, because everybody else has been turned into a mental puppet for a ruling elite who are just looking for somebody to blame. Don't be that person. Understand, it is the ruling elite that's doing that. And don't vent your fury at this group or that group. Understand that it is the people with the colonial power, and that they are not only, look, all this time, they've been going to South America, they've been going to the Middle East, they've been going to Africa, Asia, wherever, so they can go into a country and steal all the people's stuff and kill the people and extract their resources. Those entities, those corporations that went around the world and robbed and pillaged and stole and pirated, can't do that now, and they're home here doing it to you. That they've come home now, and they are now that we created these monsters of piracy and not we, the ruling elite created these monsters of piracy and pillage around the world, and that those monsters, when they can't pirate and pillage other places, they're going to come home and they will pirate and pillage. They will eat their young, and that's you, and that's what they're doing now, and that's the reality we got to come to. All right, let me look and see about super chats, and if they're there, we will answer them. And I guess that also means if they aren't, they won't. Okay. Arcane, did you hear George Galloway got detained? Yes. And I think that was he gets detained. Now the Brits say, oh, you've got to have a digital ID. You see the direction this is going. I think if you're in England, and if they're in the US and the rest of these places, Germany, wherever, you see the direction this thing is going. Take heed. All right. Next. Thank you very much, Ivan, my main man, Ivan B with the super sticker. Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate it. Let me keep going and see what I find. All right. Oh. Timothy says, Darwin, tell us why you think the Iranians are massively underreporting the number of dead Palestinians. Are they really in bed with the Zionists? No, I don't believe they are. I don't know. I don't believe they are. And for 1 second. All right. And I don't know about the numbers. Everybody is. Let's face it. For the last three years, like 6 months in, they said there's 60,000 dead Palestinians. And then what did they have? How many is there now? 61,000. How about now? 63,000. Like 2 years, they've only killed 2,000 or 3,000 people, and there's like 500 a day. Come on. The numbers are absurd. We know what's going on. Everybody knows what's going on. Minimum a 500,000 dead. And they're killing as many as they can, and the U.S. is involved in it. Someone has this. This is funny. You must have your Israeli intelligence escape pedophiles digital ID or you're on the list. Exactly. And I'll say this: does anybody really think? I'll end by saying this. What is that? The Tyler Robinson. if that thing ain't falling apart, you know, that's another thing to discredit them. Now we got to look at it and say, yeah, some guy changed clothes, quick change artist, wrote text messages, and now people are looking into Erica Kirk's background and saying, yeah, man, Charlie Kirk met her in Israel, and she had an NGO in Romania, and her parents worked for uh military industrial complex, and people are looking at all these things. Not that it gives us a final anything about her, that she's good, bad, or indifferent, but it's like all of these things are adding up together, and people are saying, scratching their head and saying something don't smell right. That's all. I don't know what any of it means. They're just saying something don't smell right. And here's the truth: something don't smell right. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Hey, look, if you can, I certainly appreciate all my Patreon people. Thank you very much. You help keep the channel going. If you can afford it, Patreon, buy me a coffee, PayPal, whatever the case may be. And of course, there's my P.O. box. If you can afford it, if you can send a donation, or you can just send a letter, you can send anything, you know, a book. People send books, all that. I certainly appreciate that. There's my P.O. box. And even whether or not you can afford it, if you can afford it, I really appreciate the support for the channel. If you can't afford it, that's fine. Do me a favor and do yourself a favor. Share this on all your social media platforms. I'm out.